my friend Steve Champney. Would you welcome Steve? So, you ever wonder who I turn to for advice, guidance, lectures, hard talks? Right? This is one of the guys. I've known Steve forever. I've known Steve longer than, I mean, you know you're getting old when you can say, I think I've known Steve for 30 plus years. Like, I don't know when we got old enough to be able to say things like that. But Steve and I talk almost every Friday morning. I go for a walk about 5:15, and Steve's the only person on the planet I know that's up at that time. So I'll call Steve and talk while I'm going on my 4 or 5 mile walk, right? And usually we're still talking when I get done. You know, with you guys, I tell you all the time, be careful of who you surround yourself with. Be really careful. You are going to be the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You will. I don't know whether that's good news for you or bad news, but think about the 5 adults you spend the most time with, and you are going to be the average of them. And whether you accept that as true or not, I do. So I'm very careful of the 5 people that I spend the most time with. Steve's one of them. And we're going to have some fun today. But Steve, let me tell you a little bit about him. I'm not going to read you his resume. He sent me his resume and I threw it away. Because it doesn't tell the true story. Steve's recently retired as chief auditor at Citibank. Okay, he had about 4,000 plus people across the planet reporting to him. And Steve is not an auditor, which I find really interesting that you're in charge of Citibank auditors, but you don't really know anything about audit.
Nope.
How'd you get that job?
Luck.
So, luck. I think we're going to find out a little bit, but that's a career, that's the last part of a career in the mortgage servicing business. And he's worked with all the big names and some you've never heard of, but some of the big names, Chase, Washington Mutual, Wachovia. How come most of the companies you work for don't exist anymore?
It's my touch.
Big jobs, okay? And hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end because some of you have opinions and you're getting asked for opinions or you hear opinions about foreclosures. Well, during his time in his career, Steve ran that at Chase, right? So you're not going to bump into anybody that knows this better than he does. And I'd like to hear what he thinks is going to happen. So let's do this. Yikes. Okay, so from lumberjack to multimillionaire, and Steve's wife is in the back of the room, Pam. Pam, would you stand up? Would you welcome Pam? Okay, so here's the problem. With both Steve's wife and my wife sitting in the back of the room, this is going to have to stay fairly accurate and on point, okay? Or I'm going to hear about it. From lumberjack to multimillionaire. So here's the dream house that you just built for your wife.
No, stop.
No, we'll see if his wife agrees with this. This is the dream house that you just built for your wife. This is the backyard. What you can't see is this is being taken probably from the intercoastal, which runs through your backyard.
Yep.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you have a dock that runs out about 40, 50 yards. Then you have boats tied up at the end of the dock, and you can just go out. He's got dolphins. I'm down there. Hey, the nicest hotel I've ever stayed at was Steve's house. Nicer than any Ritz-Carlton. Got dolphins swimming through his backyard. He's got a nice pool. You can see it, right? He just sold his wife's dream house. Sold it. Took it away from her. What kind of guy are you?
This isn't going well for you, or for me.
That's not the Steve I know. This is the Steve I know. Okay? This is a beer drinking lumberjack. That's the Steve I know, right?
Still is.
How this came to be from that guy is what I want to find out today. And, you know, when we talk on Friday mornings, half the time I'm going, man, I wish I could dial in everybody in my company and listen to this conversation. Because he'll tell me stories during the course of his career. And how'd you get from that to that? How'd you do that? And he'll tell me incidences. I'm like, I want everybody to hear that. So hopefully that's what we're going to get. But Steve, how old are you here?
I am 21.
You're 21. Is that a beer in your hand?
Yeah, it was legal. 18, 21,
And
all good. Colorado.
What in that stage of your life, what's going on?
I was, quite truthfully, I was sitting in a bar with my buddies, and I had just graduated from Hudson Valley Community College, which is a 2-year associate's degree. It took me 4 years. I'm really meticulous on study. So we're graduated, and I don't have the next step figured out, so we're sitting on a bar Friday night, and my buddy says, hey, my brother's got a gunite pool company, and I'm going out there to Colorado to work. You want to come? I'm like, when you leaving? He said, Tuesday. I'm like, sure. So I ended up in Colorado. The gunite company didn't work out. About 6 months, but in the weekends I was cutting lumber. And so when the gunite company went out, I bought the lumberjack company from this guy, me and a partner, and we cut 5,000 cords of wood with 35 guys living in camper shells, tents for 6 months. No running water. We were hunting deer and literally living in the mountains. We'd take the guys that were working with us once a month down to the bar, get them drunk, buy some beer, buy some vegetables, because we were just eating venison. And then we did that, and we took half of our load and 18-wheelers and sold it to a nursery, and took the other half and stored it at my buddy's parents' house. Then after 6 months, we had 2,500 cords of wood saved up, and then we sold it during the winter.
And that's how you made enough money to buy that?
Yeah, and that bought that house. Well, you know, that's great, but then recession hit. I was looking for a real job because winter came and you can't be 18 miles up in the mountains cutting wood. So I started looking for a job and I couldn't find one. So after sitting in a one room, it was a hotel. I rented a room for $300. That was in the bottom of a hotel. 1 room and a shower and a TV. And I didn't have a job, and I was like, man, this is not good. So I raised my right hand and I joined the military and went in for 3 years. I spent 3 years, 2 years in Germany, 1 year in Fort Myer, Virginia, and I came to a realization that I better grow up. And so through the military and all of that stuff, I started my career in financial services with, you know, and that sounds like a real planned decision. It wasn't.
Are you telling us that this guy doesn't have a life plan?
No, God, no.
You don't have a written goal and business plan, and
yeah, nothing was planned. It was just doing it. So then I had a job, 2 job offers when I came out of the military, because I knew the military wasn't for me. It was a great experience. I loved it. Loved Germany. Loved Fort Myer, Virginia. Ultimate respect for the military. My dad served, my granddad served, all of that stuff. So I had 2 job offers. Household finance as an assistant manager. Now that sounds good, but everybody was an assistant manager. Or an assistant manager of Godfather's Pizza. So I was really deciding between the two, and one started at $15,000 and one started at $14,700, so I took the $15,000 that happened to be household finance. So,
is that how you bought that house?
No, probably that wheelbarrow right there. So I spent the next 12 years at HFC learning the business.
Okay, so this is where I bump into Steve. Late 80s. Now, household finance, most of you probably won't even know what this is. This was like a finance company. Okay, my grandfather would go down there every summer and take out a loan that he would take the whole family on vacation with. And then he'd spend the rest of the year paying the loan back, and then he'd do it again next year. And these were like small little
$500 loans.
secured against your house. Yeah. So
Or your car.
I bump into a foreclosure, and that's a whole nother session that I'll tell you about sometime. And it's a household finance foreclosure, and I end up weaseling my way into getting the listing on it. And so I bump into Steve. Now at this time we're in the late 80s. Steve's working in a cube in a call center in Chesapeake, Virginia. Is that about right?
Yep.
How much money were you making back then?
Probably, I got big raise. I was probably 28 at that time, 29.
Were you and Pam married yet?
We were engaged.
You were engaged.
Oh, when we moved to Chesapeake, we were married.
So obviously she married you for the money.
She did.
Yeah. She could see back then that this was coming.
She was actually working, making more than me, so I married her for the money.
You married her for the... So you're working in a call center in a cube in Chesapeake, Virginia doing what?
I started out doing unsecured underwriting.
What's that mean?
We had a system. All the unsecured $500 loans, $1,000 loans, $1,500 loans would come in from the east of the Mississippi, and then we had another call center in the west of the Mississippi, and they would funnel to 60 of us that would handle them in queues, computer queues, which was the first time we went computerized.
And you kept getting promoted to big jobs, and now you're a supervisor at some point.
Yeah, it was a really close-knit team, and it was very competitive. So when a buddy of mine would do 35 in a day, then I said I needed to do 40. Then he'd do 45, and I'd do, so it ended up being very competitive and trying to beat each other, and then that's noticed, and then I got promoted to supervisor. The industry changed, and I went over to the wonderful world of collections instead of underwriting.
So hold there. So a few weeks ago, he's telling me the story that I want him to share with you. It was a life event, a career-changing story. And it applies to everybody in this room. It applied to me, and as soon as I heard the story, I was like, you got to come to Atlanta and talk to my group and tell them this story, because it is the core of everything. So he's telling me the story. Would you mind sharing it with him when your boss wants to meet with you one day?
So I was really, I'm really focused on goals, and when I was an individual, it was like I can beat that goal. I can surpass whatever it is, and so I always tried to attain that. When I became a supervisor, I found out that I really liked talking to my team and building a great team and really giving them the tools that they needed, and that really got me excited. And so after a few months in collections, which I had never done before other than small branches, I won Supervisor of the Month. And this is 3,000 people in a call center. There's 150 supervisors, so it's a big call center. So I won that, and you go to the SVP's room, and he talks to you and gives you a plaque and all of that stuff. I'm sure you guys do.
Did you get a parking space for a month?
No parking space.
See, you guys way ahead of that.
Yeah, you guys are treated better than I was. Then the next month, my team beat the previous record, and they all got together afterwards. I found out that they did not want to give it to someone 2 months in a row, but they end up saying the results are the results, and so let's make he earned it. So I got it 2 months in a row. So Steve Alonzo, who was running the entire center, asked to meet with me. He's a 4-up boss from me. I'm a supervisor. He's running the whole center. Nicest guy from Procter & Gamble, a production guy, and he said, can I meet with you? I want to meet with you at your office. I don't have an office. I have a cube. So I was like, sure, great, anything you want. What time you come in? I'm in usually at 5:30 in the morning. Well, I'm not meeting you at 5:30 in the morning, so I'll meet you at 8. And where's your cube? So I told him where it is. He was there at 8, and he was like, all right, tell me what you're doing. So I told him I'm setting up my people's queues, I'm getting ready for them to get in, I'm looking at their work from yesterday and all that stuff, and just going through. And he's like, that's great. And he said, you mind if I look around? I said, no, not at all. So he pulls out my drawer on the bottom, and I'd taken all of my paperwork that was on my desk, and I put it in my drawer, and I shut it. So my desk was really nice and neat. And so he said, what's this? how's this paperwork? Trying to shut the door, and he's like, no, let's talk about this. What is this? And I said, it's my paperwork. And he's like, is that from yesterday or is that from today? And I said, ooh, about a week. He's like, really? He's like, isn't some of that stuff due? I'm like, my God, I just won 2 months in a row. I'm about to get fired. So he said, you're going to never make it past supervisor. And that devastated me. I was like, what are you talking about? Now, he's not being mean. He's trying to tell me a point. And he said, you're here early. You're doing all this stuff that energizes you. What do you hate doing? And I said, I hate doing administrative work. It sucks. I know it has to get done, but I put it away. So when are you going to do it? I don't know. I'll get to it Friday. Or maybe Monday. Or maybe Tuesday. He said, you get here at 5 o'clock in the morning. He said, do it then. That's your high energy time. Figure out your high energy time and do what you hate. And then your natural abilities, your natural skills with people management and team building and all of that will flow and come out of you the day. But if you keep that stuff as a burden and you don't fix it, you'll never make it past supervisor. So he put me through some organizational classes. I got a calendar. I went to Myers-Briggs. I found out all my defects and all of that stuff. And I started making my weakness a strength. And now, 30 years later, when people see my work and see all of that stuff, they think my strength is organization, where really it's my kryptonite, it's my Achilles heel. So it's just a change in mindset, and you needed someone to tell you what you're doing wrong and then help you get and change it. And it changed my career. And he actually recruited me down the road in my career. He actually recruited me.
So we talk a little bit about, there's a book out there, it's called Eat That Frog. And the whole concept is, if you had to eat a live frog every day, you had to, you don't have a choice. For whatever reason, you are required to eat a live frog every day. When would you eat the live frog?
Soon as I woke up.
Just get it done, get it out of the way. So I want to just kind of move down the road a little bit from there. So at some point you kept doing well, you were getting in early, you started addressing your weaknesses, you tackled things that you wanted to procrastinate, but you just did them first and got them out of the way. So this made you eligible for more and more, right?
Yeah.
At some point I get a call from his boss. And his boss says this to me, he goes, hey, I'm going to transfer this dude down to Atlanta. He's going to take a job in Atlanta. I want you to take care of him. I'm like, sure. So I meet with Steve when he comes down to Atlanta, and this big promotion he got is this little bitty household finance branch at South Lake Mall down in Morrow, right? Now look, it's a little shitty branch in a shitty part of town that wasn't going anywhere. And I'm like, this is the guy that I'm supposed to take care of? So I meet him for lunch at a steak and ale, and I'm thinking, and he's telling me, well, my wife and I want to buy a house, but my wife works in the northwest side of the city, and I'm going to work on the south side of the city. So basically, we'll buy a house anywhere in Atlanta, and we want to pay about $130,000, $140,000. I'm like, oh,
no,
this
130. You push it to 140.
So just kind of imagine this with me. Oh, this is good. I've got a home buyer that can live anywhere in Atlanta and wants to spend $130,000. Oh boy, aren't I about to get rich, right? But I do it. You take over this branch at Household Finance, right?
Yep.
Right. How much were you making then?
Maybe 36, 37.
Boy, Pam, where'd you spend it all, right?
In the house you sold us.
Was it that house? No. It was a house over in Stone Mountain, which I think I've sold it 4 or 5 times then as a foreclosure.
Most likely.
So we're not to this point yet. So let's just kind of advance down the timeline. You started doing well and getting job offers, and that required you to move quite often. So can you kind of just walk us quickly down that road? Because this gets interesting. I want you to listen to this, and I want you to measure it against what you think your level of commitment is.
So I think the most important thing is when the opportunity in Georgia came up. Pam and I were pregnant with her first child, and you know, we were talking, she wanted to stay at home, and actually she was making 50 and I was making 50. And so in order to stay home, you know, we were going to cut our income in half. So it was really important that we decided which path we were going to follow. So her and I agreed that we would follow my path, and that, you know, and she was great in saying, you know, if there's opportunities, you know, we'll as long as they're the right opportunities, we'll talk about them and we'll take them. So having that support system is critically important, because if you don't do something as a unit, you're done, and then it doesn't end well. So having said that, I have the personality where I always want to be challenged. So, and I'm a risk taker to a certain extent, kind of calculated risk taker. But I always believed in myself, and that I could, you know, I was starting to gain confidence that, you know, hey, this stuff isn't above me. I can actually handle this. I can actually manage people. I can actually do this. So that built confidence, and quite frankly, the 12 years in household trained me to handle that stuff. But it also meant that you had to go to the opportunity. You couldn't wait for the opportunity to come to you. So at household, I think it was 3 or 4 moves between Georgia, and then we went to, it was up there, I kind of forget what it was, but in Indianapolis, Phoenix, Las Vegas, back to Chesapeake. So we moved around quite a bit with household, and then actually Indianapolis was one where Steve Alonzo, the gentleman that I was talking about before that helped me 10 years before that, ended up calling me and saying, you haven't left household, you've done all these things. I went to Household Credit Services in Vegas, running their bankruptcy department. What did I know about bankruptcy? Nothing. It's a process, and it's people. So let me learn the process, and unfortunately when I walked in, everybody was standing on all the bankruptcy files that had never been processed, so I kind of walked into something I didn't expect, but you fix it, right? So anyways, I got the call from Steve Alonzo, and it was a double of my pay, and it was to come in and run default servicing, which I'd never run before, in mortgage. And I said, great, where is it? And he said, Indianapolis. Well, what I didn't know is it had not been established yet. So it wasn't that I was running it, I had to actually set it up. But he didn't tell me that part of it. But it was it was part of Bank One, at Bank One Financial Services. It was their subprime arm of, so that's household, where I got the whole portfolio of subprime, and then I went to a subprime mortgage portfolio and ran the default servicing and set it up between Indianapolis and Phoenix.
So let's do this. So Chesapeake, Atlanta, these are the ones I can think of. Vegas, right? You went to Vegas.
Come on, Pam, what was
Vegas,
This was Chesapeake, and then Chesapeake to Phoenix, Phoenix to, I can get on.
Indianapolis? No, Phoenix back to Chesapeake.
No, that was Vegas.
Vegas, yep.
So you moved so many times you can't even remember where you live.
You know, I put it up here for him and he didn't use it. So he said he didn't want to use it, and now he's asking me to remember it. I can't we moved 16 times.
16 times, this is what I'm getting to. 16 times. In how many years?
At that point, it was probably only 22, maybe 25.
Think about that. They moved not from one side of a city to another side of the city, they moved across the country 16 times in 22 years.
So I left household, went to Indianapolis, I went to Phoenix actually with Bank One, and he put another individual, my peer, and we were both SVPs at the time, and now I had 150 people in Phoenix, I think. And so he put us kind of against each other, and he was like, you know, whoever wins is going to run all of default. So you have I had west of the Mississippi, my counterpart had east of the Mississippi. My team produced great numbers in the first year. He promoted me in 9 months, and I had to move back to Indianapolis to take the whole thing over.
So I want to pause there for just a second with you, because we each wrestle with something similar too. It's the commitment and the sacrifice that each of us has to decide whether we are or are not willing to make. Okay? Now, just pause for a second in your own head and imagine that for the next 22 years, you're basically going to move about every year, year and a half, and you're going to move to another city where you know nobody. And think about this. Think about what that would mean to your family. Would Pam and their kids, would they establish friendships everywhere they go, knowing that a year later would they make roots in the community? See, we do, because in our careers, well, we're very likely to be sitting here, hopefully, a year from now, just like this. So we can, Selena, you can get involved in Canton and all the little things, right? Because you're going to be in Canton, right? And you've been in Roswell for how long?
34 years.
34 years. So you make friends and you get involved. But look at the sacrifice Steve and Pam had to make. They don't do that. Their friends are people that he works with, because you don't have time to build relationships in each city. You're not going to be there very long. And that's the sacrifice that they had to consciously make. We're going to give up on this. We're going to talk about why in a few minutes, but don't move past that. Would you do that? I know.
And we had a process with my partner where she would stay back with the kids, with the dogs, with the sale of the house, with all of the nonsense that goes on with movers and all of that, while I was going forward into my new position for 90 to 120 days, one time for a year, and I would immerse myself into the issues and to the bank, and she would immerse herself into the kids and getting them situated and all that. So we were connected, but we both had different roles in that. And if I didn't have somebody that was doing that, there's no way I could have pressed through and worked 16-hour days to try to find out what the issues are and try to resolve them in a quick pace. But I always gave myself 90 days to go in, listen to everybody, understand the issues, be real about the issues, and then you have to fix them.
And after all that sacrifice on her part, you built this house and then you sold it.
You and I are going to have to talk.
Pam, Jane, would you give Pam a hug? I mean, that's so bad.
Didn't you sell your wife's dream house?
Shut up. Move on. Get out. Ouch.
But I made money.
Yeah, well, that's okay, now you can get out. Okay, so let's fast forward, and you end up in Jacksonville and with Chase. I just want to fast forward. What are you doing with Chase? This is one of the biggest banks in the world, right?
No, I was actually, in 2005, I actually was with WAMU.
Ooh, who remembers Washington Mutual? When you say subprime, when you say worldwide economic meltdown, you say Steve.
I was
and
up to my ears with subprime.
Okay, so you're at WAMU and Chase got involved in there somehow?
I was running all defaults, and after a year, we turned it around, and the regulators noticed it, the rating agencies noticed it. We turned it around to put it up for sale. So then we put it up for sale, and Chase bought us. Did the due diligence, came in, worked with me and my boss for a 4 or 5 month period of time. Were extremely generous, wanting to make sure that the team didn't leave that we built. So for 5 months, they were double paying employees, including us. They were giving us bonuses. They were really encouraging us to stay the course and all of that stuff. So we'd meet with the executive team and we'd go out and we'd say, this is David and Goliath, this is Chase. I mean, they're just gonna cut our heads off. I mean, we're done. And we knew it. And we'd get a severance package and we'd leave. I mean, that was what it was. We were 1,000 people, right? 1,500 in servicing, they were 35,000. They were the behemoth. Well, Sam Cooper came to John and I, my boss, and said, we are gonna let Chase management go and we want you guys to take it over. We were like, what? But you have to move to Columbus, Ohio. It's like, oh my gosh. So, hey honey, guess what? I'm not fired. That's the good news. Bad news is 11th move. We're going to Columbus.
So let's fast forward a little bit more, and let's get right up to like 2008, and so the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket, right? Who remembers 2008? Some of you weren't born yet, right? Okay.
So
I'm not calling on you, but I really want to, yes. Okay, so you get offered a job at Wachovia. Okay, so I'm fast forwarding to that point. Wachovia means you get to move again.
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Did you ever make it to Charlotte?
I did.
Did Pam ever make it to Charlotte?
A few times. Like
Permanently?
6 or 7. No, I stayed there for a year, and within 4 months, I knew there was a problem. And I said, Pam, don't move.
So I want to tell a little story, okay? Now, he doesn't know I'm about to tell the story. I don't know if he's going to like this or not. But he's been on the job at Wachovia. Does Wachovia still exist?
Nope.
No. Here's some. How many companies don't exist that you work for?
Almost all of them.
So he's been on the job about a week at Wachovia, and we're talking one night. It's fairly late. It's past my bedtime, and I'm like, Steve, have you had a drink or two? He goes,
Oh, yeah.
well, I have to go into the board tomorrow and tell them what. Do you remember this?
So it was a little more than a week. My team took about 90 days. And
A week's a better story.
Yeah, I'm not that smart. There was a Golden West portfolio that Wachovia had acquired.
Pick-a-pays?
Yeah. And
Tell them what a pick-a-pay mortgage is.
so you would get a mortgage, and you, as the customer, were allowed to pick 3 or 4 different solutions, one of them which was a negative amortization, which just meant your balance kept on going up. So 85% of the people that got these, because they were low interest rate loans, picked negative amortization. So that wasn't the big issue. The big issue is 90% of the portfolio had been modified at least twice. And in the OCC regulations, once you become a federal bank, then you can only do modifications 2 times in 5 years and 3 times in the lifetime of the loan, and that's it. So when my team did the due diligence on how many had been modified, it was over 70% of the portfolio, and therefore we had to rerun the delinquency curve with some direction. And I'm not an accountant, but through data management and learning through household and learning through 2005 through 2008, when securitization started happening, they were putting bad loans on the books, and I'm like, hello, we got a problem here, guys. First payment defaults are 10 times the industry average. Shut up, just keep collecting the money, And so it grew and it grew and it grew until it was a real problem.
So your board, do you remember that your board was expecting losses, and you thought the losses were going to be substantially different?
They had, and so when all of this was falling apart, Lehman and Goldman Sachs was going out, I was doing the analysis on the losses, which were $12 billion, which was what was booked. And that was a 1-to-1 ratio, and actually after I did my analysis, it was $42 billion. And $30 billion we only had, the company, Wachovia, the 100-year-old company, only had $22 billion in liquidity. So you're upside down, you're bankrupt. So my team found it, and I was like, I think we have a problem. So we ended up meeting with the smart people, all the accountants and all of that stuff, and they told my boss that I was wrong. It wasn't 42 million, it was 40.5 billion, but they earned their money, we were still bankrupt. So we had to go tell Secretary or Treasurer that we were bankrupt, and I was on that call, and it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all.
So now I want to fast forward. These companies you keep going to work for, they keep going out of business, you keep getting promoted.
Yeah,
Oh, well,
it's a great model. It's a great model.
okay. You end up at Citibank, biggest bank in the world, okay, and you're chief auditor. What do you know about audit?
I know what a bad one is.
Are you an auditor?
Nope.
Are you an accountant?
Nope.
Do you have an Ivy League education?
Hudson Valley's a very good school.
Hudson Valley Community College.
Yes, it is. It took me 4 years to graduate.
But
It's
now,
tough.
somehow, you end up on Wall Street working at the biggest bank in the world, running worldwide audit, and you're surrounded by guys with Ivy League MBAs all the time.
Yeah, kind of boring, huh?
And you went to what school?
HVCC.
Hudson Valley.
Go Vikings.
So I want to know how somebody with a community college degree that was a lumberjack, beer drinking lumberjack, who was hustling wood on the side, who has no experience in audit, is not an accountant. How do you end up being chief auditor, and how do you compete against all the guys walking around inside that big office tower in Manhattan with Ivy League MBAs? How do you compete against them?
Well, I mean, how you get there is... So when I took over Wachovia, it was an emergency. I've always gone in firefights. I've always tried to be a fix-it guy. I enjoy doing that, and I've become pretty good at it. So anyways, when I walked into Wachovia, I knew this shape we were in, and I knew it had to be quick decisions. So I don't pull punches. McKinsey was in there before me for 3 or 4 months. We had a $7 or $8 million contract with them to kind of do the analysis on what was going on with the Golden West portfolio. So I was introduced to the head there at the site of McKinsey, who was a junior partner. And he presented me literally with 18 binders, 18 or 19 binders, 3-inch binders, all the data, beautiful charts, I mean, beautiful work. And I said, who's the senior partner here? And they said, Piotr Kaminski. And I said, okay, where is he? He's in Poland. And he said, all right, I'll give him 2 days to come here and meet with me. And he's like, well, no, he's going to be there all week. And I said, I'll give him 2 days to come here and meet with me because this is an emergency. So I introduced myself. I was nice for about 5 minutes, and then I said, this is crap. You know, I can't execute on this. It's going to take me 6 months to read it. You got 30 days to put this in an executive summary with actionable items that I can actually do, and it can't be more than 2 pages. So tell me the problems, tell me what I need to do. I'm not going to read it. So Piotr and I became really good friends after that visit. He didn't appreciate my sense of urgency, but that's okay. How I got the job with Citi is actually the OCC put everybody, 14 biggest banks, on consent orders because of the failure of internal audit. They should have caught all this. They should have been involved. They should have. So what the OCC, the regulators, came in and said, we screwed up too. We were in oversight. So they said they want part of the consent order. They do not want an auditor at the head of audit. They do not want an auditor. They want an operator. So when Citi was meeting, they hired who? McKinsey, and who's their senior partner? Piotr Kaminski, who I just worked with on Wachovia to modify the whole portfolio, and he was interacting with one day. So they were talking as a board and saying, we need to find an operator that can come in here and take over audit and, you know, find all the problems. Piotr's like, I think I know a guy. You might not like him, but I think I know a guy. So Piotr called me and said, would you be interested? I'm like, I'm not an auditor. I hate auditors. I'm not going there. No. So then I got called from Citi, and I turned it down 3 times, and I think they were getting frustrated with me, but finally we came to an agreement as long as I had a couple things that I lined out. By that time I had gotten pretty good at negotiating contracts up front. So we had negotiated a contract for me to come on board. And then I got to meet all my people.
Let me fast forward a little bit. You're walking around the halls of Citibank, and all of your peers have these big, fancy educational backgrounds and blue blood families.
Sure.
And
smart people.
Right.
Smart.
How do you compete against that?
Work harder.
Work harder. So what time would you get into work?
I'm a early riser.
What's that
Always
mean?
have been. Sports, all of that stuff throughout my whole life. My biggest downfall probably with my wife is I'm usually up 4 o'clock in the morning. Even now, retired. I'm up and ready to go.
So what
now
time
I go to
would you-
bed early, but you know.
When you were at Citi, what time would you typically get into work?
After a shower and a shave and 5 o'clock, 4:45, 5 o'clock.
What did that do for you? Why is that important?
I got all the stuff that I don't like to do out of the way so that when my people started coming in, I was ready for bear. And creating the teams, creating the unity, creating the strategy, working with the regulators, making sure we're meeting their expectations, and then communicating to the board, all that stuff that naturally comes natural to me, I would be able to do throughout the day because my schedule was booked 12 hours straight.
So you didn't have an uncle on the board.
No.
You didn't go to Harvard or Yale or Brown. You didn't have
They all did.
You didn't have an MBA from Duke.
Nope.
No. So you beat your competitors how?
You know, it wasn't about beating the competitors. It was about looking at the challenge that was ahead of me and working with management to say, here's the tools I need. So I'm usually in a firefight. So when you're in a firefight, you know, like we are here with real estate market, right? Then I asked for the tools that we needed to fight this fire, and it was really trying to unearth the truth. So once I was able to get the resources, then the truth was my friend, and I threw everything away that they were doing before because it didn't work. They were using, you know, the same audit schedule every single time. So the person you were auditing knew exactly what you were going to audit because he or she had the list of what you were going to audit. It became very routine. We weren't looking for defects. We were looking for checking the box. I threw that away. And a funny story, I told my boss, who I almost didn't make it an audit because 2 weeks after I got there, the head of audit that hired me got fired because of all of this. They brought in this big ticket head of audit that was a PhD in audit, and that's all he did all his life. And I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And he was like, I don't know why you're here. And at the end of the day, we were the first ones that came out of the consent order from the regulators, and my people did a tremendous job.
So I want to emphasize this to you guys, okay, because it's really important. You need to surround yourself with people that make you want to be better. And if you aren't interacting with people every day that you go, I can be on the phone with Steve and get off the phone and go, I thought I was trying hard. I'm not even. Being around somebody like Jay, okay? Jay, how many workouts did you do this morning?
Just one.
Just one today? Were you feeling a little tired, lethargic today? What time did you get up this morning?
3:36.
3:30. I like being around people like Jay. Makes me want to try harder. Keeps my perspective right. I might think I'm trying hard, and then I bump into her or I talk to Steve, and they're at another level. They just want more. They want more in their life. It may be money. It may not be money. It may be fitness. It may be relationship within their family. They just want more. And they're trying harder than I am. And that makes me want to try harder. And that's where I find motivation. So many of us are just walking around thinking that if we're motivated, it'll just naturally happen to us. No. I go and seek it. If you don't have people like that around you, get them. Surround yourself. That's why I married my wife. I mean, yeah, she's a hot chick, okay? So I got that in there, didn't I? Everybody heard me. Yeah, but she makes me want to be better. And that's why. Surround yourself with people that make you want to be better. That's how you stay motivated. Now, I want to ask Steve a couple questions. If you have some questions, you have the foremost authority on the mortgage world. Somebody in front of you right now that single-handedly ruined the world's economy and devastated several very large banks. So now's your chance to find out what happened and what's going to happen. What's going on with foreclosures? Are we going to have a big wave of foreclosures next year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with there could be other programs coming out that the government puts in place. I don't know, but, I think there's 8 million people that are in that foreclosure queue that haven't been moved on, and that continues to grow. My experience with that is no matter what programs you offer, those people are usually not paying for a reason, and they usually are not able to get out of that situation, especially if the job market dries up. So they're going to come out. They're probably, historically, the more someone stays in a place that they aren't paying for, the deterioration happens. So my concern is if people are living in foreclosures for 3 and 4 years without paying, they really aren't going to take care of the property. And then when they do leave, they might even damage it more. So there's my opinion is unless the other programs come out, there's a delay factor, but that dam is building, and when it releases, there's going to be foreclosures that come out. It'll depend on the state. Some are judicial, some are non-judicial. Moratoriums will probably be, approved through the regulators to try to rewrite people. But it's just, I mean, they're going to have to come out on the street at some point. Whether that's a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years, I don't know.
Let's open it up to you guys. Any questions that you would have for Steve? I'll kick it off. What do you think? Where do you think? Do you think I'm right about interest rates, or do you think Greg's right about interest rates?
I think interest rates will stay low because it's a underpinning of the economy right now, and if you raise interest rates immediately, I think you're going to have some problems. So, but my feeling is, just like real estate, when I saw 2005 happen and us go into inappropriate lending and everybody competing for that dollar and then creating a culture and a frenzy of this activity, I knew in the core fundamentals it couldn't continue. It just, people were in places that aren't affordable, and the flipping will have to stop. And when it did, it was a problem. And we all went through that problem. I see this the same way. There's going to be a reckoning. I just don't know what it is and where it is and when it's going to happen. But I think whenever there's an effect, there's a counter effect. And, this is a cyclical business. So make your money now.
Questions? Rip.
So more of a personal development question. So outside of early morning, eating frogs, getting your hustle on early, is there a specific daily healthy habit that you would go, man, this one was extremely impactful for me to continue to implement day in, day out?
So a couple things in our industry that I really stayed focused on and really made my career on was it's just not hard work. I mean, because I didn't have the educational background and I felt I had to compete and we were always going into problems, I felt I needed to be there, all the time until it was fixed. So the captain of the ship, when the ship's going down, you better be there or your people are going to bail. The second thing was there was a lot of temptations and a lot of stuff that shouldn't happen in our industry because there's a lot of vendors, there's a lot of kickbacks, and he'll tell you he didn't make any money off me. I was like, you earn it, but I'm not going to take things that I shouldn't be taking. People would pay kickbacks and all that stuff, and I just kept to my principles of integrity. And there's some funny stories about that, but I won't share with right now. We'll have a beer and do it. And then that.
Sounds good. I'm coming down to your place. We'll have a beer.
There you go. And then the last
You
thing.
mean the house that he sold, his wife's dream house?
And then the last thing was I really got focused on my direct reports would never say I was their favorite boss, but they would probably say I helped them the most in their career because I held them accountable. I was very direct with my feedback, probably too direct sometimes, but I had their back 100% of the time. We have guys that were collectors and now are EVPs running 4,000 people that were on my team for 15 years, moved them 4 or 5 times, put them through heck, yelled at them every day, but at the end of the day, I had their back. I had 5, 6 direct reports. getting to managing director is a board-approved position at City. It is rare. There's probably 10 of them a year out of 250,000. 4 of my 6 direct reports after I left had made it to the managing director, and I had given them the opportunity, and they did the work, right? So I just recognized them. And by doing that, then I got recognized. But you know, when we got out of the OCC, I brought all 6 of my direct reports in, and I didn't even show. I just had them talk to it and left. So I just built teams, and they were fabulous. A lot smarter than me.
I want to quickly move to a different thing, because everybody in the room isn't trying to build a dream house like this that they would eventually sell out from under their spouse. So some people...
Like a Coney, right?
It's not all about this. So this is your family, right? So you have...
That was the first dream house that we sold. The same time we sold the other house.
So you have 2 beautiful daughters, right? Yes. Very successful. Highly successful. So you moved 16 times in 22 years. I mean, doesn't that wreck a family?
Yeah, they're terrible. They are very dysfunctional. No, my kids are fantastic. They're all doing their own thing. They're all out of the house. They're my oldest daughter, who's there in the middle with the big smile, is engaged now and going to be married. Daughter on the right, Becca, is a deaf education teacher, master's 4.0 in 5 years, and works at the Florida Deaf and Blind School. It's the #1 school for deaf kids in Florida, and she is very challenged with her position.
So watch this. It's not all about money, folks. You can have balance. You can. You've got somebody in front of you that's living proof of it. You've got 3 very healthy, very accomplished children. You now are retired, but you run charitable organizations, right? Like after school care for at-risk children, that type of thing.
Yeah, we've had a foundation for 10 years now, and we're trying to redevelop it into the new environment. And Pam and I were talking with a couple friends this week here in Georgia. We stayed with for a couple days on really where we want to push that, what direction we want to get, because before it's been a monetary thing where we're able to support different, but now we want to get our hands dirty. Now that I'm free and my wife's free and the kids are gone, sort of, at least out of the house, we're really talking about how we move that forward so that becomes our passion. So. And
your son Adam, that's a special story. Would you talk about Adam?
We were coming back we were driving to Indiana, I guess, from Christmas or something. We were in a car, just my wife and I, and the other kids, and they were young, and we had 2 girls, the normal way. And so I was kidding my wife and said, only if we can have a boy do I want a 3rd kid. And well, that's really my responsibility. And so we decided, because Pam was volunteering for Indianapolis adoption agency. She was working with some of the people there. There was a lawyer we knew there, so we decided to go down the path of adoption. So we were looking at a few different countries. We did our research. Amongst the moves that we were doing, she did a year worth of paperwork, filling out, I mean, I got the copies, it's probably this big, just paperwork after paperwork. So we finally decided that we were going to go to Russia. We went to Russia twice. We walked into the orphanage, which was an abandoned school. There was 200 kids there, and we said, we wanted a child, a boy that was under 6 months old. And so we had a group to, kind of play with, and that's very difficult to do. You're picking them out of a group of 6 months old. But there was a couple other couples there that we got to know. And at the end of the day, we walked out of Russia after 2 visits to Moscow and the area, and we had him, and we don't even think of him. He's not adopted. He's our son.
So Steve's not going to tell you this, but I want to bring it up so that it gets brought up, because it's not all about money. The career success and the money allows you to do other things. It allows you to adopt Adam, right? And your experience in a Russian orphanage, would you just talk about what you wanted to do something for the orphanage when you were leaving?
So like we talked about, now remember, my degree is from HVCC, so, you know, I'm a little slow. And when the experience for us was so life-changing, there's 200 kids, there's no running water, there's no heat, Russia is cold, brutally cold, so you got open windows of a school with no heat, and you got 200 kids in there, and they tell you that, I'll try to maintain composure, but they tell you the kids on the second floor are over the age of 2 years old, so they'll never be adopted. It's only the kids 2 and under, so you got 150 kids up top, and you got 50 kids here, and you know, we're picking from one of the 50, you know, and we had already seen the dossier and stuff, so we had already picked them before we came over there. And it was just, when I asked the caregiver what would happen to those people because they're not getting educated, you know, and it's jail. It's jail or drugs or death at 18. They go away. So where America has some things in place, back then they didn't. So, you know, our view was we want to take more, but you can't. It's paperwork, it's bureaucratic. You can't just take the kids, right? So when we were leaving, I asked, what can I do? And, you know, can we send money? No, you can't send money because it'll never get to us. You know, because it's got to go through different hands, and those different hands take the money. So we were getting very distraught, and so then I said, here's where my HVC comes in. I said to her, can we do like a VCR and a bunch of tapes and all that? She's like, we don't have any electricity. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a problem. So she was like, food or medicine? And I'm like, okay, well, medicine. What do you need? Well, only 2 of the kids have hepatitis A, B, and C, which we take for granted, right? So in the wintertime, we'll lose 7 or 8 kids. And so I was like, okay, well, how do I do that? Well, you just go to the pharmacy, and if you can take care of 3 kids, that would be fantastic. So I was like, okay. So we went, and she wrote down the prescription, which is in Russian, I can't read. The driver drives us to this pharmacy, which he speaks no English, and I give it to him, and he tells me how much it is, and I look at it, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So then I gave him what is equivalent to $600, and that took care of hepatitis A, B, and C for all 200 kids. And she just about passed out. And I was like, you know, that really spurred us on to say, you know, how much impact can we have on other kids and, you know, all of that. So, you know, we've been supporting people in Ethiopia, Destiny Academy, and my daughter had the luxury of going out to Ethiopia a couple times and meeting one of the people that we had supported, and the young girl sought her out, and she was leaving the village, and she was in a doctorate program, and she was going to come back to the village and become a doctor. And we said, without that, my daughter said, without that support, what would have happened to you? She said, I probably would have had 2 or 3 kids. I'd be living with my mom in the hut.
So when you struggle with what your big why is, that line of bullshit that we get pushed at, like you're supposed to have your big, hairy, audacious goals, right? Your BHAGs. Watch this. So he doesn't know I'm about to go here. So you go all the way back to this guy, okay? So if you don't eat that frog every morning, if their boss at Household Finance doesn't come in and give you that advice, and if you don't follow it, and if you don't get your shit together and start getting in and out working everybody because you don't have the educational pedigree that they all have, if you don't do all that and you don't move 16 times in 22 years, do you build your wife her dream home and then sell it out from under her?
Probably cleaning the pool.
Probably cleaning the pool. And where's Adam today if you don't?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. Don't even want to think about it. Probably won't be around.
So when you look at what your big goal is, I mean, it can be money, but if you don't make the money, I mean, if you do make the money, what are you going to do with it? And most of the time, for most of us in the room, it's Jay, you have a grandson.
Yes, sir.
Semi-important to you?
The world.
How many of us in the room can say that? We're not working for ourselves, right? Leanne, how many grandchildren do you have?
5.
5. You like seeing them?
I do.
You do. I don't think she's working for herself. I don't think anybody is. Right? So if you don't do all that, your daughter's not helping deaf children, right?
Well, you know, there's a sacrifice in everything. And if it wasn't for my wife making the bigger sacrifice, because I was the business guy, I would, you know, I'd fly around, I'd go to the restaurants, I'd meet with people, I'd work with my teams. I did a lot of hard work, but you know, you have to have the priorities of the children and the education and how you bring them up. I mean, I was around for the kids, but I traveled. I traveled probably 50% of my time, especially when I was with City for 7 years, because it was international. But she was always there for the kids and always there for the support. If she wasn't there for that, and you know, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So whether it's my focus was really trying to retire early so that I could spend the last part of my career or my life with, you know, family and friends and trying to do things different, because quite frankly, the corporate world, I managed it well. I was able to get through the politics and the bureaucratic stuff that I hated doing, but I knew I couldn't stand, me with my personality, I couldn't be in a organization that was just running smoothly and I was just part of the cog. I had to go in and fix it. So I knew that was a priority, and you build your life around that, and then you have some drawbacks. Moving 16 times was not fun, and it was not fun for her back there. But there's a lot of benefits that it provided too. So you just, whatever that commitment is, whatever that is, just make it. And it doesn't have to be work, because not everybody is going to put their life into work. It could be your kids, it could be whatever. But once you make that commitment, just do it.
So I want to leave you with this morning. Surround yourself with people like Steve, and don't surround yourself with anybody else. And then if that means that you're lonely today, you know, we talk about this, right? It ain't lonely at the top. Does this sound like Steve's lonely today? No, it's pretty cool at the top, and there's a lot of cool people waiting for you at the top. But what I think is true is it is lonely on the way to the top. They had to move 16 times in 22 years. He was getting in at 5:30 every morning. That means he's not out partying. He's not going to neighborhood parties all the time. He's not building a vast social network. He's building a business. You surround it's lonely. No doubt it's lonely. It's lonely on the way to the top. If you're not lonely today, you ain't doing it right. But when you get to the top, there's a lot of people like Steve waiting for you there. Surround yourself with people like that motivate you, that inspire you, that make you want to try harder. And then you don't have to be so self-reliant on motivation every morning. Does it make sense? Would you join me in thanking Steve and Pam for joining us today? That's good. Let's go make it happen. Let's go. Ready? Go.